welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time, as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. The retro game I want to look at today is my least favorite single-player Zelda game, and that is going to be Zelda 2: Link's Adventure for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, I don't know what Nintendo's deal was with the NES and making these ridiculously hard sequels to their originally fantastic titles. Zelda 2 is a great game in a lot of respects, but it is so ungodly hard so many times that it's not fun to finish this game. In fact, it's almost impossible to beat this game in a lot of ways. But let's break down kind of what makes this game good and what makes it frustrating, because there's a lot to break down here. First and foremost, I played this on the Zelda Game & Watch, and I had a marvelous time. I highly recommend it. It has 3 great titles on it, because this game is really great in a lot of ways. It's an RPG. It's a side-scrolling RPG, which is very, very unique for the franchise in general. No other game has done this, but it's really a lot of fun in that respect. You have to beat enemies and get enough experience to level up Link, and then you get new abilities and upgrades, more HP, more mana, more different things that will help you along your quest. What you don't, if you do go into this gameplay not realizing though that you have to pretty much do everything in the game to beat it, that's where it can be really difficult if you don't understand that. And I did not know that going into the game. I didn't realize that finding every secret, getting every upgrade, and fully leveling out Link was 100% essential. So I got to the final dungeon and just had to grind over and over and over again to get the right amount of experience so I could finish this game. Because some of the bosses and some of the sections are just so incredibly difficult. The side-scrolling itself works pretty well. You have standard movement, you can jump. This is like one of the few times Link can actually jump. You have a sword slash. Most of the strategies revolve around jumping and slashing in the air with your sword to like eliminate lag and such, or crouching and just keeping enemies out that way. Some enemies will be like immune to certain attacks. So if you're just jabbing them right in the front, they might have a shield. You might have to jump and hit them on the head on your way down, or poke at their feet, stuff like that. So the combat is actually fairly nuanced, especially for an NES title. It's really creative, and I actually really like the combat. What I don't like is how the enemies come into frame a lot of the times. You'll have overwhelming amounts of enemies. They kind of just come at you from random directions. They'll bounce around on the screen. You have very little time to react, so you have to really memorize patterns. You have to know how to like bait out one enemy at a time in certain areas. You have to know how to beat certain enemies because they're like a roadblock in the way, and it just is so tedious and time consuming. But it is also rewarding once you figure out how to abuse the system in the best way possible, because abusing the system here, the Hurtbox system, is the only way to really beat this game. But there are lots of areas. It's a little bit archaic in terms of how you like get from area to area. Sometimes you have to, I had to do a lot of guide searching. I had to look up, and I don't have like an original guide. I think that was back in the day on the NES. They had guides that went along with their games that were always very helpful, especially for these puzzle type games. So I had to use a walkthrough for this, and I highly recommend that as well, because some of the times, some of the puzzles that you need to do, some of the people you need to talk to in these villages, you have to like do a specific pattern, a specific thing to unlock this, which unlocks this, which unlocks this. And so it's just a little bit tedious if you're just going through and trying to figure it out on your own. You probably won't be able to, because it is a little obtuse sometimes. But getting through each and every dungeon is actually pretty fun. They have really great dungeon design, especially for a side-scrolling Zelda game like this. They did a really good job of implementing good dungeon design, good enemy design. The boss fights are pretty fun, except for the final boss fight. And this is where all my criticisms really stem from. Getting to the final boss, or getting to the final dungeon itself, is a Herculean feat. You have to do a whole ton of like brute forcing your way through this game, leveling up Link as much as you can, finding, doing all the puzzles and getting to this point. And then you have like this stretch of path that you have to go through. You have like an overworld that you can walk through, kind of like Dragon Quest style, Final Fantasy style. And then once you get to like a little town, you actually go into it, and then you have the side scrolling. So you have the top down overworld, and then you get into this straight here at the very end. You have this pathway to the final dungeon, which is really what's really nice about this part. Once you get to the final dungeon, you actually have like a checkpoint, so that when you die, you come back to starting at the dungeon instead of having to go through this like absolute hellscape to get there. You don't have to do that over and over again. Every other time you get sent back to the starting world, you can keep going. You still have all your upgrades and everything. And again, the Game & Watch, you have like a save system and everything like that. It's very nice. But this time you actually get a checkpoint because of how brutal this straight is. You have like several different paths with like the biggest, beefiest enemies that you fought throughout the game, several of them in each area. You have to get past them. You have to use everything that you've learned, all the upgrades that you've gotten, and make sure that you are just, again, brute forcing your way through this so that you can get to the final dungeon. That straight alone is so time consuming. It took me several tries just to get through it, and it was really maddening. I do not like that part of the game. But then the final dungeon is even harder. Not because the enemies or the placement or anything is all that difficult, but because when you finally get to the final boss, if you have not fully leveled Link, if you have not done everything in your power to be maxed out in every single way, you will not beat this boss. I sat and grinded for I think 3 or 4 levels, and once it gets higher and higher. The more you like level up, the more experience you need, like a typical RPG, to get the next level. But in this case, when you're stuck at the final dungeon and your checkpoint is here, you have to just grind inside this dungeon. So I found like one enemy that I could go off screen, come back on, attack over and over and over again for literal hours to level up Link. I did sessions of grinding just these little enemies to level up Link to get to the point where I could finally go fight the boss. And it was so tedious and time consuming that I never wanted to go back and do it. But I'm like, you know what? I need to finish this game. Zelda's my favorite franchise of all time. Let's beat this game. And it took hours of grinding, but I finally leveled up Link to the max. My biggest recommendation if you're going to attempt this game is get your level grinding done before you get to the final dungeon, because it is a slog to do it. I think it wouldn't be fun either otherwise anyway, because you have to fight like higher level enemies, give you more XP, but then you have to fight them over and over and over again. If you find one that you can farm, that's the best method for that you should probably take. But it was awful. And then getting to the final boss, I tried the final boss so many times, even after each level up, and I just could not beat him. He was too hard. I didn't have enough defense. My HP wasn't high enough. My attack wasn't high enough. I needed every single bit of advantage that I could get. And when you finally beat that boss, and the boss is still ridiculously hard, even fully leveled up, I beat it with a sliver of health left. And very fortunately for me, I knew the strategy for going into the actual final boss. When you beat, this is spoilers for the game if you don't know it, and it's a very old game, but if you don't know the final twist at the end, once you beat the final dragon boss that's attacking you, you actually go into a final boss battle against Shadow Link. This is the first instance of him. He's actually super cool. But you go into this without getting any of your health back. So I had one sliver of health left, and if you die, congratulations, you get to start it all over again. But fortunately, this is the best strategy for you. If you go all the way to the left of the screen and sit in the corner and crouch and just spam attack over and over and over again, there's nothing Shadow Link can do, and you will be able to beat him that way. Fortunately, I knew that. If I had to go through that every single time and hope that this time I could beat him, I would have quit forever ago. But fortunately, I had already heard of that strategy before. So this game is just maddeningly hard in every conceivable way. This is much harder than Mario 2 was for me. Platforming, I can deal with some janky challenges. I can deal with some RNG every now and again. I can get through those things. But in this game is just so hard for the sake of being hard. There's no rhyme or reason. It just feels like an impossible challenge that you just luck out and finally finish. That's how it felt to me. So this game is great in so many ways, but the ways that it's so infuriating make it absolutely not worth your time to fully finish, in my opinion. Now, again, since I love Zelda, and since this is a well-constructed game, I am going to give it a silver rank. I think that is fair. I think a silver ranking is absolutely fine with me. But it is... oh man, it's hard to even say that because I never want to touch this game ever again. But let me know in the comments section down below. If you've played this game, let me know what you think about it, what you think about if they should ever revisit this kind of style. I think it'd be cool if they remade this game and made it a little bit more accessible or made it just a little bit more polished. I think that would be really nice. But let me know in the comments section down below what you think, and then thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.